The reason the book was written was really so much has changed in architecture, but particularly in tall buildings. I had done a book about 6 years ago on tall buildings called Imagining the Skyscraper, and in the time since that, and that wasn't that long ago, obviously computers are omnipresent in the process. They're particularly omnipresent in the tall building design process, which means everyone has them, everyone on the design team has them, everyone's tracking the design process in real time together every minute, and if you're working abroad, you're sleeping while they're eating and vice versa, and it's even going faster. So the process is a completely much more permeable, high velocity process. It yields different kinds of results and different kinds of interactions between the people that are involved. Input is enormous, frankly. The ability to channel input is kind of a different dynamic now. Software programs are much more advanced than they were a decade ago. Coding is happening at all times. The kind of algorithmic thinking about creating performance and being able to achieve a certain level of performance in tall buildings is really at the front of everyone's mind. The irony of that, of course, is that you can measure everything now because it's all digital, thus the term performative in the title. But just because you can measure it and just because you might get a high level of performance, the irony, of course, is that doesn't mean it's great architecture, right? In fact, it may not even be good architecture, but it's highly performative. So the book deals with some of these kind of humors, if you will, of the process of performative architecture. But so much of all this has changed that I thought it was time to initiate a conversation about performative design, its pluses and its minuses, and how it's changing and opening up the whole process to new ideas. And that's what the book is. It's really a kickstart on a subject that I believe probably didn't need this particular kickstart, but got it, and will go for years as we talk about how the process will be ever more open, and the kind of formal and content-related aspects of tall building design will continue to proliferate. So that's what the book is about. There are 5 chapters. I'm not going to read chapters, but one is about performative ecologies and sustainability and energy management. One is about skins. All of us types are terribly interested in skins and layers and managing the things that skins manage. In LA, we're particularly interested in skin, right? I mean, the sun and the bikinis and all that. Performative parametrics is the 3rd chapter, and parametrics is just the ability to algorithmically focus on design parameters and very specifically and on a custom basis solve particular problems. And so there's a whole piece on parametrics. Parametric neighborhoods is chapter 4, and that really takes a chapter from the first book and goes further with it, which is when neighborhoods are no longer as horizontal, they become vertical. What happens when there are vertical neighborhoods? What does that mean to a building? How is it different than it used to be? And finally, performative cities is really, I'll run through 7 very different cities and how each of them have tall buildings, so there's something in common, but those tall buildings in each of those cities are quite different because they perform to different kinds of norms and expectations and requirements in each of those cities. Sao Paulo, Tokyo, Berlin, Shanghai, Los Angeles, these are very different places, but we all have our tall buildings. So those are what I think are the compelling issues about tall buildings, but just as compelling is the USC School of Architecture, and that's the invitation to Dean Ma to be here. I'm going to ask him to say a few words, but our hope here was with the book that we could donate all the proceeds from the sales to the School of Architecture. USC in general and the School of Architecture in particular are involved in a major campaign of fundraising. I know from personal experience I've had the pleasure of teaching there, of lecturing, of visiting, of being the director of the master's program for a number of years. And it's an extraordinary program in the most experimental major U.S. city here. It happens to be here, and they're just over there, downtown adjacent and the center of Los Angeles. And to get an education there in architecture is an opportunity to access as much as you could ever expect to as a student. And in fact, there is more than a small trickle of students from that program, I'm not sure why, that end up here and in other offices that we admire. So with that, I'd like Dean Ma to come forward and talk a little bit about it.
Great. Thank you, Scott. We're here really to celebrate Scott's new book, Performative Skyscraper, or Tall Building. Scott is a really generous friend. Being an architect is really a generous profession, right? You turn places into enjoyable environment. You turn cities into world metropolis, and you turn everything into something that enjoyed by all human beings. So that alone is a very generous profession. But also architect who can actually share knowledges through beautiful, elegant book that more people could then get into their mind, get into the process of how the generous architectural act could turn the world around into something we all enjoy. And that's generous. Even more generous is the preceding of the book that you all, I hope, have purchased one or two, maybe three.
For all your friends, maybe.
Right. And goes to USC School of Architecture. I see that as absolute, complete, sequential, increasing generosity that represented by my friend Scott here and his partner all here, Bill and everybody in the office. And I have to say I see this office as a generous, warm home for myself. I remember many years ago when I started my first term, I was warmly welcomed here with friends through the city, and they have really treated me well. That generosity goes deep, really. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everybody in Johnson-Fain office and friends who are here. See the book and buying the book. Great. And so Scott has a really long connection with the school. He was the chair of the graduate architecture program for a number of years. I believe through those years, the program has really picked up what excellence practice and what critical thinking that embedded in otherwise a professional degree. And I think I myself benefit from that energy. When I first took the job, graduate school was the key to grow the graduate school into a critical mass that we can embrace practices like this, advanced technology, and really critical thinking. So that, I believe that's a cusp at the moment when Scott fulfilled his chair at that time. So for that, I think the school and myself in debt of your involvement with the school. And I learned their practice actually deliberately when I quickly became their personal friend. I said, now we drink together, we talk together. Literally, yeah, that's not a symbolic statement. So now I have to know their work. So I dig into their practice. It's really respectable practice, have taken on this legacy of LA practice, really embrace a wide range of building types, including tall buildings. Scott has been really practicing tall buildings for 30 years. There are many landmarks in the United States, around the world, that has been designed and built under the care of the office. I'm not going to name them all. The book have cited all of them. But I just wanted to say, in this book, although performative is a word that has been so now popular through all the educations, through all the architectural debate, through every kind of forum, but I do believe that the book has examined not only performative in its kind of environmental way, but really go deep in the design, ranging from the parametric digital forming tools that is emerging into the structural challenges for super tall buildings, but particularly in the integration of all the technology. Then all the way to what the skink, the performative skink, which is really I still believe the most important thing that a tall building that as a strong landmark of a city must have presented to the outside world, yet to define the interior environment. So that is all great, but more important than that, I think he brings all those down into a very urban context and again enter a debate or a discussion of urbanism, cultural, globally, and as global as his practice. I do believe there are buildings in Beijing now being designed super tall, and many other cities in the Pacific Rim and North America. So with that, I also wanted to, with a very humble stance, and wanted to have a round of applause of what is USC School of Architecture, very exciting, extremely exciting. This year marks our 100-year anniversary. It's the centennial anniversary of the program. Think about it, it's been 100 years. So I only been a dean for 7 years. I can't imagine 100 years ago what is it like, but I can only imagine that it's still going on. It is still kind of thriving and adding that rigor, adding that intensity. So we're really taking the advantage of the year and looking forward to the next 100 years. So our slogan, it's next 100 years. We past 100 years very quickly and gone. So it's the next 100 years that we're celebrating with the charge Design Forward. We are in 2 days graduating the 100th class in 2 days. On Friday, the commencement, we're delivering the 100th class to the world. And alumni, graduates from this 100-year history has really changed the surface of Southern California, Los Angeles, and the world. Anywhere you go, you see buildings, and you check the design list, you must see a USC alumni on it, and professor like Scott. With that, I thank you again. If you haven't purchased the book, I encourage you to do that. Just contact your friends, numbers, your colleagues, and buy a dozen of them. It may not be everyone.
Maybe have a carton price available.
So now this is my dean row. I have to really push it because the preceding goes to the program. Once again, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dean Ma.
Yeah,
Thank you.